So you're a DM who's taken an interest in our crafting rule sets, but you can't figure out how rare resources work. You understand how cultivation works in general, but you're having trouble setting the DC for gathering resources. We can help with that. Rare, blue, and very rare, purple crafting recipes have special components that match their rarity. Alchemy requires azure lotus and violet lotus. Blacksmithing requires anthracite and bloodstone. Leatherworking and bow making require monster tallow and dragon tallow. Most of these things can be gathered the same way as other resources. In that regard, you can say that bloodstone is kinda like a rare type of iron. To make crafting balanced, however, these special resources are intended to be a little bit more difficult to come by. That is where our cultivation DC table comes into play. When it comes to gathering most materials, the difficulty of doing so scales with two criteria: player level and task challenge. To keep the game interesting, all gathering attempts need to scale with level. Otherwise, your players would just harvest more and more materials as they gain levels, and inevitably end up breaking the game. Similarly, rarer resources are more difficult to find and therefore more difficult to harvest, especially as your players gain levels. The Cultivation DC table provides you the framework you need to set an appropriate DC for all gathering attempts. Let's say you've got an alchemist in search of herbs. Using the table, you can figure out the DC for gathering herbs based on the player's level, as well as the type of herb they're looking for. Let's start simple. Your alchemist is 2nd level, and they're looking for verdant frond, a common herb. Since they're only 2nd level, the base check DC is 11. Since the herb they're looking for is common, the DC doesn't increase beyond that, so the DC stays at 11. Now, let's say your player is 11th level, but they're still looking for verdant frond. The base DC increases from 11 to 15, because their level is increased. Since they're still looking for common herbs, however, the DC still doesn't change based on the difficulty of the task, so the DC stays at 15. Now let's say the same 11th level character, however, isn't looking for verdant frond anymore. Now they're looking for azure lotus, a rare herb. Since the herb is rare, the DC of looking for it increases by 5 in accordance with the table, so the DC goes from 15 to 20. Starting to make sense? With the rare resources and cultivation DC tables, you can easily determine just how difficult it is for your players to gather the resources they need to craft new and improved gear. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time on Dungeon Creep.